Is there a potential for war based on everything that's going on? It's a serious question, and I've been asked that by several people. China has been blaming us. Iran and Russia and Chinese media outlets have been claiming that it was a U.S. bioweapon that's spreading across the world and that our goal was to, disrupt their economies or cause them harm or something like that. We've heard conspiracy theorists across the board from every country, claim they know what it is. No one, I want to say no one's really sure, but the prevailing idea is that it's just a naturally occurring virus. There is some reason to believe that it originated in a Chinese lab on accident, that somebody was doing this is a report from the South China University, that somebody had been investigating that coronavirus and may have gotten contaminated and thus it spread. But now we have this other story, which brings me to my question about the war, right? They say, suspected SARS virus and flu samples found in luggage. FBI report describes China's biosecurity risk. At what point do we recognize that China is a great threat, not just in their direct actions, but also their incompetence? There was a story that went viral at the start of the coronavirus outbreak from 2017, I believe it was, there was concern from the international community that China was opening a level 4, biolab in Wuhan. The concern was that China would not properly contain viruses and other agents which could breach, and then, basically this would happen. Some people believe that it was made there on purpose. Other believes it was breached on accident. We don't know if any of that's true, but we do know, at the very least, the international community has been concerned that China does not know how to handle these things properly. Which brings me to this story and the question I asked. At what point do we say we cannot allow them to keep doing this, risking the entire world? Not to mention, look, you make a blundering mistake. What about the camps they're running with the Uyghur Muslims? I don't know. I'm not saying there should be war. I'm saying at a certain point, something happens and we are getting dangerously close, especially when we hear that in 2018, a Chinese biologist was stopped carrying SARS viruses in vials. Yahoo News reports in late November 2018, just over a year before the first coronavirus case was identified in Wuhan, China, U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents in Detroit stopped a Chinese biologist with 3 vials labeled antibodies. The biologist told the agents that a colleague in China had asked him to deliver the vials to a researcher at a U.S. institute. After examining the vials, however, custom agents came to an alarming conclusion. Inspection of the writing on the vials and the stated recipient led inspection personnel to believe the materials contained within the vials may be viable Middle East respiratory syndrome and severe acute respiratory syndrome materials, says an unclassified FBI tactical intelligence report obtained by Yahoo News. Wow. The report, written by the Chemical and Biological Intelligence Unit of the FBI's Weapons of Mass Destruction Directorate, does not give the name of the Chinese scientist carrying the suspected SARS and MERS samples, or the intended recipient in the U.S. But the FBI concluded that the incident and 2 other cases cited in the report were part of an alarming pattern. The Weapons of Mass Destruction Directorate assesses foreign scientific researchers who transport undeclared and undocumented biological materials into the United States in their personal carry-on and or checked luggage almost certainly present a U.S. biosecurity risk. The WMDD makes this assessment with high confidence based on liaison reporting with direct access. The report, which came out more than 2 months before the World Health Organization learned of a cluster of pneumonia cases in Wuhan that turned out to be COVID-19, appears to be part of a larger FBI concern about China's involvement with scientific research in the U.S. While the report refers broadly to foreign researchers, all 3 cases cited involve Chinese nationals. For the past several months, there have been stories emerging about people at universities being arrested for taking money from China and not reporting it or lying about it. These are people who are sharing research with the Chinese government, and they were not telling U.S. authorities about it. So they're getting arrested. We'll see how far this goes. Now, this is very, very disconcerting. Could it be that the COVID-19 virus, not a bioweapon, not something extreme, but was Chinese scientists fumbling around with materials they did not fully understand or couldn't contain properly? Because now we're learning there were fears that they were going to have a breach. Now we're learning they were actually carrying these things through an airport. In the case of the suspected SARS and MERS vials, the intelligence report cites another classified document that is marked FISA, meaning it contains information collected under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Another case cited in the report appeared to involve flu strains, and a third was suspected E. coli. The FBI does not state precisely what sort of biosecurity risk these cases could present. Actually, it looks like we have, wow, these are images of the vials. This is incredible. Photos of 11 September 2019 incident. Look at this. They say, substantiation. On 11 September 2019, a Chinese national initially made no positive declarations, but was later found to have 8 vials of a clear liquid in their checked luggage at Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport. The vials had no supporting documentation. The Chinese national stated the materials was DNA derived from a low pathogenicity strain of H9N2. However, some of the vials had WSN handwritten on the top. And through open source research, CBP determined WSN is an acronym associated with the H1N1 influenza collected in 1933. The material was confiscated, and the individual was allowed to travel to Dallas, Texas, where they were traveling to work with a researcher associated with an identified U.S. research institution. This isn't just about one incident. This is documenting several. They mentioned what happened in 2018, but there was another incident on the 26th of May, 2018. I'm not here to speculate as to what they're saying and what may or may not be. We don't know. But it stands to reason that China is playing a dangerous game with biological materials and not declaring them at the very least. They say, they mentioned, I was looking at the photo. They don't state precisely what the risk would be, but Raina McIntyre, professor of global biosecurity at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, said the FBI appears to be concerned with dual-use research that would be used for bioterrorism. And if the illicit samples cited in the report were being brought to the U.S., she says, the traffic is likely to be both ways. What am I reading? This is Yahoo News. How do you know what they're bringing in and out unless you have a comprehensive surveillance report? If it's going one way, it's going the other way. You'd be very naive to assume otherwise. This is nuts. Retired Air Force Brigadier General Robert Spalding, who worked on China issues on the National Security Council under the Trump administration, said there is a threat posed by Chinese nationals carrying biological samples, but believes it's likely the carrier would be someone who is unwitting, making it hard to determine the intent. Some likely could be deliberate to test our ability to identify and intercept. Others could be opportunistic. The FBI report refers to both biosecurity, which typically refers to the intentional misuse of pathogens, such as for bioterrorism and biosafety, which covers accidental release. The FBI declined to comment on the report. We have experts saying the fears are bioterrorism, that Chinese nationals were bringing in, potentially smuggling in samples undeclared. This is scary stuff, man. And I'll tell you what, I'm reading Yahoo News right now. It's not some conspiracy crackpot website. Maybe it's fake news. I take all of these stories with a grain of salt, but this is seriously damning information. Concerns about Chinese biosafety are not new. For example, the SARS outbreak in 2003 was followed by several incidents of infections caused by laboratory accidents, including 8 cases that resulted from mishandling at the Chinese Institute of Virology in Beijing. There have been cases in the past where a variant of some kind of flu pandemic had escaped from a laboratory because of mismanagement, said Elsa Kania, an adjunct senior fellow at the Center for a New American Security. The problem is not limited to Chinese researchers, even if those cases have been prominent. Certainly, it is a biosecurity risk when anyone is transporting materials in a manner that is clandestine, because there have been several incidents when this has occurred with researchers of a variety of nationalities. So biosecurity, this sounds like terror. I don't know for sure. I can tell you this: at the very, very least, we gotta call out China, man. This is no joke. If they're having unwitting people carrying samples in what looks like a baggie in little vials, and they're flying on airplanes, if that vial broke, or if there was a breach on the airplane, all of those people traveling all over the world would carry this around, and it could infect everybody. And that's the irresponsibility of China at the very least. The worst case scenario is they're doing this kind of stuff on purpose. So that to me is truly the most alarming thing. The story says, now, with relations between China and the U.S. deteriorating, Huang expects collaboration on biological research to grow even more difficult, reversing decades of cooperation. Quote, I often argue that U.S. engagement with China is the most successful in the area of public health, he said. Such cooperation even survived the difficult period after the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests. Now, however, those relations are being set back as hostilities between the two countries grow. You could argue health is borderless, especially when two countries face these common challenges. This would be a time for them to collaborate mostly closely. That turned out not to be the case. I don't think so. I disagree. I don't trust China, man. They've got concentration camps. They've been transporting back and forth these vials. We know researchers are lying about the funding they're receiving. We better get a handle on this. The FBI has been investigating this, and I think, based on this, it sounds like it goes deeper and it's much more terrifying than we realize. Look at these photos. It's just, I don't know what it says. It says flag PRS, PCDNA flag PBI. I don't know, WSN. It was flu, they said. They were carrying around, and it looks like it's rather insecure. Perhaps that's what happened with COVID-19. I don't know. But I'll leave it there. This is interesting stuff coming out of Yahoo, and I don't know what it means, and I'm not going to speculate. We'll wait for more developments. I got one more segment coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.